A decision that Canada has delayed for decades is quietly returning to the center of the national conversation. It is not being announced with dramatic headlines or sweeping political speeches. Instead, it is unfolding the way many of Canada's most consequential choices have always unfolded, carefully, deliberately, and with an understanding that the true consequences will be felt long after today's debates have faded. For more than 10 years, Canada has been searching for a replacement for the CF-18 fighter jets that have protected Canadian airspace since the final years of the Cold War. What began as a technical modernization effort has evolved into one of the most significant defense procurement discussions in the country's modern history. This is no longer simply a question of which aircraft performs best on paper. It is a question of national direction. At stake is whether Canada will continue to define its defense posture primarily as a buyer within a larger system dominated by others, or whether it will step forward as a country capable of shaping its own industrial and strategic future. This is a question that resonates far beyond military circles. It touches economic security, technological sovereignty, and Canada's role as a mature partner within NATO. For much of the past decade, the outcome appeared settled. Canada committed to acquiring 88 American-built F-35 fighter jets at an estimated cost of $27 billion. The decision promised continuity and predictability. The F-35 was already integrated into North American defense planning, deeply embedded within U.S. systems, and widely adopted by allied air forces. Choosing it aligned Canada closely with its most important ally and minimized political friction. In many respects, the F-35 represented the familiar path. It followed a procurement model Canada has relied on for generations, purchasing advanced platforms from the United States, integrating into American-led supply chains, and accepting the constraints that come with that arrangement. For decades, this model served Canada reasonably well, particularly during periods of relative global stability. But the world that shaped those decisions no longer exists. The strategic environment of 2025 is defined by renewed great power competition, fragile supply chains, and increasing pressure on middle powers to take greater responsibility for their own security. In this context, long-standing assumptions about dependence, efficiency, and alignment are being re-examined. It is within this shifting environment that a credible alternative to the F-35 has re-entered Canada's strategic debate. That alternative is the Saab Gripen E. On the surface, comparing fighter aircraft can seem like a technical exercise. Speed, range, sensors, stealth, and weapons integration dominate public discussions. But the true significance of the Gripen proposal lies not in technical specifications alone. It lies in the industrial and political framework Sweden has attached to its offer. When Swedish representatives arrived in Ottawa, they did not simply propose selling aircraft. They proposed building something together. At the center of their offer was the establishment of a full fighter jet production and sustainment line on Canadian soil. Not partial assembly, not limited maintenance, a complete ecosystem capable of manufacturing, upgrading, and sustaining advanced combat aircraft over decades. This distinction matters. For generations, Canada's defense industrial base has existed within the long shadow of the United States. Canadian companies have participated in major programs, but rarely as prime manufacturers. Instead, they have operated as subcontractors within foreign-led systems. Participation in the F-35 program reflects this reality. Canada's financial contribution to the F-35 allowed domestic firms to bid on contracts across the global supply chain. According to Lockheed Martin, this participation is projected to generate approximately $15.5 billion in industrial value for Canadian companies between 2007 and 2058. These numbers are real, and they represent meaningful economic activity. Yet they also highlight a structural limitation. Canadian firms remain dependent on decisions made outside the country. Production volumes, timelines, and priorities are set elsewhere. In this model, Canada benefits economically, but it does not control outcomes. The difference between being a nation of subcontractors and a nation with an independent manufacturing base is profound. One model provides work, the other provides authority. Saab's proposal bypasses the traditional offset framework entirely. Instead of promising equivalent economic investment after a sale, Sweden is offering to anchor long-term industrial capability directly inside Canada. The plan envisions Canadian facilities producing Gripen aircraft not only for the Royal Canadian Air Force, but potentially for allied nations as well. This is where the conversation moves beyond procurement and into strategy. The revival of a domestic fighter manufacturing capability would mark a historic shift. Canada once possessed this capability. It was lost decades ago, not because of a lack of skill or ambition, but because strategic choices favored foreign sourcing over domestic production. Rebuilding that capacity would represent a conscious decision to reverse course. Economic considerations are central to why this proposal has gained traction. The federal government has been increasingly clear that military procurement must deliver tangible domestic benefits. This position was made explicit by Minister of Industry Melanie Joly, who publicly stated that the F-35 purchase is under review because Canada believes military procurement should deliver more. Her remarks reflected a growing public sentiment. Canadians understand that $27 billion is not an abstract figure. It represents national resources that can either strengthen domestic industry or flow outward with limited long-term impact. The question is not whether Canada should invest in defense, but how that investment should serve the country. Saab's commitment includes the creation of approximately 10,000 long-term jobs in Canada's aerospace sector. These are not temporary assembly positions. They are skilled roles in engineering, advanced manufacturing, software development, systems integration, and sustainment. For a country with an established aerospace ecosystem anchored by companies such as Bombardier, CAE, and MDA, this proposal builds upon existing strengths rather than attempting to import them. Canada already possesses the technical talent, educational infrastructure, and supplier base required to support advanced aerospace manufacturing. What has been missing is the strategic decision to use those capabilities at scale for national defense production. Accepting Saab's proposal would immediately begin to fill that gap. The political response to this possibility has been complex. The review of the F-35 agreement was ordered during Prime Minister Mark Carney's tenure, at a time when trade tensions with the Trump administration heightened awareness of economic vulnerability. While the review has not yet reached a final conclusion, it has reopened debates that were once considered settled. At an October 23 meeting of the House of Commons Defense Committee, opposition Conservative Party members raised concerns about the potential impact of altering course. Specifically, they questioned whether shifting away from the F-35 could jeopardize existing Canadian contracts tied to the program. These concerns are legitimate. Canadian workers currently benefit from F-35-related work, and abrupt disruption would be irresponsible. But the broader issue remains unresolved. Protecting current subcontracting roles is not the same as securing a long-term industrial future. The debate increasingly centers on whether Canada should focus solely on preserving existing arrangements or pursue a more ambitious vision that creates new capacity and new opportunities. Sweden's commitment to this partnership has been reinforced by sustained high-level engagement. Visits to Ottawa have included members of the Swedish royal family, senior corporate executives, and the Swedish defense minister. This level of diplomatic involvement underscores the seriousness of the proposal. It signals that Sweden views Canada not as a customer, but as a long-term strategic partner. This partnership aligns with broader shifts within NATO. With Sweden now fully integrated into the alliance, industrial cooperation between Canada and Sweden rests on a solid legal and strategic foundation. Establishing a Canadian production hub for European-designed fighter aircraft would expand NATO's industrial footprint and reduce reliance on a single source of supply. For Canada, this represents more than an economic opportunity. It represents a chance to redefine its role within the alliance. Instead of contributing primarily through procurement and participation, Canada would contribute through production, sustainment, and technological leadership. This shift carries responsibilities. It requires long-term commitment, investment, and political courage. It also requires a willingness to accept that greater independence brings greater accountability. But it is precisely this maturity that many Canadians believe the country is ready to embrace. As this debate continues, one question increasingly dominates the discussion. If Canada has the talent, the infrastructure, and the opportunity to reclaim a measure of industrial sovereignty, should it choose to do so now, or risk losing that chance for another generation? That question does not yet have a final answer. But the implications of the choice extend far beyond procurement schedules and balance sheets. They reach into Canada's economic resilience, its strategic credibility, and its confidence as an independent actor on the global stage. If this perspective has been useful, take a moment to reflect on what kind of role you believe Canada should play in shaping its own future. Many viewers have shared thoughtful insights on similar issues, and your perspective adds value to that conversation. In the next part, we will examine the geopolitical and operational consequences of this choice, including export sovereignty, NATO dynamics, and the realities of defending Canada's Arctic territory. Beyond economics and industrial strategy, the Gripen proposal carries consequences that extend into geopolitics and sovereignty. These consequences are not abstract. They shape how Canada acts, how quickly it can respond to crises, and how much control it retains over its own foreign policy decisions. At the center of this discussion lies a regulatory framework that few outside defense circles fully understand, yet one that has quietly shaped Canada's strategic options for decades. The United States International Traffic in Arms Regulations, commonly known as ETAR. These regulations govern the export and transfer of defense-related technologies containing U.S. components or intellectual property. For countries that rely heavily on American-designed systems, ITAR compliance is unavoidable. For Canada, ITAR has often functioned as an invisible constraint. Even when Canadian companies manufacture components or complete systems, export decisions can be delayed or blocked by regulatory approval processes in Washington. This effectively grants the United States veto authority over certain Canadian defense exports, tying industrial opportunity and foreign policy flexibility to decisions made outside the country. The Gripen proposal changes that equation. By manufacturing Swedish-designed aircraft in Canada, Canada would gain the ability to export without U.S. approval. This is not a symbolic shift. It is a fundamental act of strategic sovereignty. It allows Canada to support allies based on Canadian decisions, Canadian timelines, and Canadian interests. This autonomy matters most during moments of crisis. The ongoing war in Ukraine has revealed serious limitations in existing Western fighter supply pipelines. The transfer of F-16 aircraft has been slow, politically complex, and constrained by training requirements, maintenance infrastructure, and regulatory approvals. While these challenges are understandable, they highlight how difficult it can be to move advanced air power quickly when control is fragmented across multiple governments. The Gripen was designed for a different operational reality. Built to operate with high availability, minimal ground support, and rapid turnaround times, it is well suited for conflict environments where infrastructure is damaged or dispersed. Its ability to operate from rough runways and austere bases makes it particularly relevant to the Ukrainian theater. Several NATO nations are reportedly supportive of Canadian-built Gripen aircraft being supplied to Ukraine in the future. If Canada were able to fulfill that role, it would represent a significant shift in alliance dynamics. Canada would move beyond financial and logistical support and become a direct provider of combat capability. Such a role would not weaken NATO, it would strengthen it. Diversifying sources of critical equipment increases resilience and reduces the risk of bottlenecks during prolonged conflicts. Yet it would also redistribute influence within the alliance, a reality that naturally generates resistance. Washington's discomfort with this possibility is often framed in terms of interoperability and alliance cohesion. These concerns deserve consideration. But they also mask a deeper issue. For decades, the United States has maintained a near monopoly over Western fighter jet supply. Losing Canada as a wholly dependent buyer would reduce American leverage and introduce a capable new industrial competitor into the market. From a Canadian perspective, this should not be viewed as confrontation. It should be viewed as maturation. A confident alliance is one in which capable partners share responsibility rather than concentrate it. Sweden's accession to NATO reinforces the legitimacy of this partnership. Under NATO industrial cooperation rules, Canada can legally manufacture Swedish defense systems. This creates a European-Canadian industrial bridge that expands the alliance's manufacturing footprint beyond Europe and the United States. It also aligns with NATO's growing emphasis on industrial resilience and distributed production. Canada is uniquely positioned to play this role. It offers political stability, deep engineering expertise, abundant land for advanced facilities, and access to Arctic airspace for testing and training. These advantages have not gone unnoticed. Saab's long-term vision explicitly recognizes Canada as an ideal North American partner. Geopolitical considerations alone, however, are not sufficient. Any aircraft selected to protect Canada must be operationally effective in the environment that matters most to Canadians, the Arctic. Once considered distant and peripheral, the Arctic has become a central strategic theater. Russia continues to rebuild and expand its northern military infrastructure, deploying advanced missile systems, modernizing air bases, and increasing naval patrols. China, while not an Arctic nation, has expanded scientific and economic activities in the region, signaling long-term interest. Canada's responsibility to defend its vast northern territory and contribute meaningfully to North American Aerospace Defense Command has never been greater. This responsibility demands aircraft that can operate reliably in extreme cold, across immense distances, and with limited logistical support. Senior Royal Canadian Air Force leadership, including Lieutenant General Jamie Spicer-Blanchet, has emphasized the importance of advanced capabilities when confronting potential adversaries, such as Russia and China. The appeal of fifth-generation stealth technology in this context is clear. The F-35 offers advanced sensors and low observability that are valuable in high-end conflicts. Yet the Arctic imposes its own realities. Stealth aircraft require meticulously controlled environments to maintain sensitive coatings and systems. Specialized tooling, climate-controlled hangars, and extensive support infrastructure are essential. Deploying and sustaining this infrastructure across the vast and often inaccessible Arctic significantly increases costs and reduces operational flexibility. Centralized bases become unavoidable, limiting the ability to disperse aircraft during crises. In a contested environment, this concentration increases vulnerability rather than resilience. The Gripen was designed with a fundamentally different philosophy. Developed for Sweden's subarctic conditions, it prioritizes robustness, simplicity, and rapid maintenance. Gripen aircraft can be turned around quickly by small ground crews and operated from short, rough runways, including road bases. This capability enables true dispersal, a critical factor in survivability. For Canada, this operational flexibility translates into greater coverage of the Arctic, reduced dependence on vulnerable fixed infrastructure, and the ability to sustain operations over extended periods. It offers a practical approach to sovereignty patrols and rapid response across vast distances. Operational effectiveness must also be measured through fiscal sustainability. Former Department of National Defense procurement official Alan Williams has consistently emphasized that approximately 70% of any major defense acquisition's cost lies in its life cycle, not its initial purchase. This reality often receives less attention than acquisition headlines, but it ultimately determines readiness. By some estimates, the Gripen's life cycle cost may be as little as 1/6 that of the F-35. This difference is not theoretical. It affects how many aircraft can be kept combat-ready, how often pilots can train, and how long deployments can be sustained without straining the defense budget. Lower operating costs create strategic flexibility. Funds saved can be redirected toward other pressing priorities, including NORAD modernization, naval fleet renewal, land force upgrades, and the sensor and satellite networks essential for Arctic surveillance. In an era of constrained budgets and expanding responsibilities, efficiency becomes a force multiplier. Alan Williams has suggested that a mixed fleet approach could offer Canada the best of both worlds. Under this model, Canada would retain a limited number of F-35s for specialized missions while relying on Gripen aircraft for the majority of day-to-day sovereign defense operations. This approach balances advanced capability with affordability and resilience. Another critical advantage of the Gripen proposal lies in sovereign control. Full access to software source code, mission data libraries, and intellectual property allows Canada to integrate domestically developed weapons, customize electronic warfare systems, and implement rapid upgrades without external approval. This level of autonomy is increasingly rare in modern fighter programs. Such control is particularly valuable in the Arctic, where the electronic environment is unique and evolving. Being able to adapt systems quickly to emerging threats ensures that Canadian pilots are never constrained by external timelines or permissions. Industrial momentum behind the proposal continues to build. Canadian aerospace suppliers are reportedly engaged in planning roles related to composite airframes, avionics, radar modules, electronic warfare packages, and flight control computers. This indicates that the transition from concept to capability is already underway. The decision facing Ottawa is nuanced, rather than binary. Canada has committed to acquiring an initial batch of 16 F-35 aircraft, scheduled for delivery between 2026 and 2030. These aircraft are largely paid for and can fulfill specific high-end roles within the force. The remaining portion of the planned 88 aircraft fleet remains open to strategic reassessment. A phased approach allows Canada to honor existing commitments while embracing long-term transformation. It avoids abrupt disruption while enabling the development of domestic manufacturing capacity and sovereign control. Opposition to such a shift is predictable. U.S. policymakers, military officials, and industry advocates argue that deep integration with American systems is essential for interoperability and continental defense. These arguments reflect legitimate operational concerns, but they are also shaped by economic self-interest. The deeper fear is the loss of Canada as a dependent buyer. Once Canada gains the ability to manufacture and export its own fighter aircraft, the balance of influence within North American defense changes permanently. This reality underscores the importance of the decision. Choosing to produce the Gripen in Canada is not an act of defiance. It is an assertion of responsibility. It signals that Canada is prepared to contribute more than funding and alignment. It signals readiness to contribute capability. Canada now stands at a defining crossroads. A domestically built Gripen program, supported by approximately 10,000 skilled jobs, sovereign export control, and operational suitability for the Arctic, would reshape Canada's defense posture for the next 50 years. It would strengthen NATO, support allies in moments of crisis, and ensure that national defense spending delivers national prosperity. This moment calls for thoughtful discussion rather than reflexive positions. If this analysis has added value, Consider sharing your perspective in the comments. Many Canadians have expressed appreciation for balanced, informed discussions on issues that shape the country's future. Thank you for taking the time to engage, and thank you to everyone who continues to support meaningful conversations about Canada's role in the world.